Hi guys, so Boris Johnson wasn't in Parliament on Wednesday because he was self-isolating and he was communicating via video conference. Now, in another video conference on Zoom, he spoke to members of the Conservative Party in Scotland where he described devolution as a disaster. Now, he was challenged by both the leader of the opposition before this, and he was challenged, of course, by Ian Blackford of the SNP. So let's hear what they had to say.
Mr. Speaker, and can I wish the Prime Minister and all those that are self-isolating well. Mr. Speaker, over the past 20 years, Westminster has imposed an extreme Brexit, an illegal war in Iraq, £9,000 tuition fees, the Windrush scandal, the rape clause, the bedroom tax, and a decade of Tory austerity cuts which have pushed millions into poverty. At the same time, the Scottish Parliament has delivered free prescriptions, free tuition fees, free personal care, free bus travel, the baby box, the Scottish Child Payment, world-leading climate action, all of which made Scotland a fairer and more equal place to live. Does the Prime Minister understand why the people in Scotland think it is him and his Parliament that are the real disaster?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I respectfully refer the right honourable gentleman to the answer I gave to the Leader of the Opposition. I may say that I do think that his policies of wanting to break up the Union are a disaster, and I wish he and his party would focus on the real priorities of the people of Scotland, on education, on health, on tackling crime.
Okay, but if the people of Scotland didn't believe that the SNP were focusing on these issues, then they wouldn't vote for them. Why has the share of the vote, the SNP share of the vote, increased? Why is it continually increasing? Why are more people voting for the SNP if they're doing such a bad job in Boris Johnson's eyes? Why is the leader of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, why is she more respected on the world stage when it comes to the pandemic, dealing with the pandemic, than Boris Johnson? Why is the approval rating of Nicola Sturgeon higher in England than Boris Johnson's? Not just in Scotland, but also in England. Why are there more and more English, supportive of Scottish independence? If Boris Johnson is doing such a fantastic job, shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't there be growing support for Boris Johnson, not growing support for the SNP?
And housing and the issues that matter to all our people. That's what a devolved government should do. I was very proud to run a devolved administration, and that's what we focus on.
So he's talking about London, where he was the mayor of London, and he increased the debt to Transport for London. Now, Sadiq Khan had to come in and pick up the pieces, and he's getting criticised for actually borrowing more money. But Boris Johnson did not leave it in a stable way, to say the least. But once again, he's trying to paint a picture that the Scottish people are not happy with the SNP. Now, some people probably aren't, but if the majority are voting for the SNP and the elections next year are pointing in the direction of a majority, a bigger share of the vote for the SNP, then they must be doing something right.
We didn't endlessly go on about constitutional change and the breakup of the UK.
In Blackford.
My goodness, I'm not sure if the Prime Minister was listening, because I just charted some of the achievements of the Scottish Government delivering on behalf of the people of Scotland. Mr. Speaker, no apology and no regrets from this Prime Minister. His attack on devolution wasn't just a slip of a tongue, it was a slip of the Tory mask. The chasm between Westminster and the Scottish people has never been bigger. We know that these were not just flippant remarks when Scotland faces the biggest threat to devolution with the Tory power grab bill. The fact is, Scotland has been completely ignored by Westminster. We now face an extreme Brexit, a power grab, and another round of Tory cuts, all being imposed against our will by a Tory government that we didn't vote for. Exactly. Isn't it the case, Mr. Speaker, that the real disaster facing the people of Scotland is another 20 years of Westminster government? Isn't it clearer than ever that the only way, Mr Speaker, to protect Scotland's interests, our Parliament and our place in Europe, is for Scotland to become an independent country?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, no, I could not disagree with the Honourable Gentleman more. He is totally wrong. And what the UK does as a whole is far, far bigger, better and more important than what we can do as individual nations and regions. And I think that actually when you look at the way the UK has pulled together during this pandemic, the way the armed services have worked to get...
Okay, but they didn't really pull together. They were working independently. Wales had a lockdown while England didn't have a lockdown. Now England is in a lockdown while Scotland are in a different situation. You weren't responding to requests for meetings from both the leaders in Scotland and in Wales. So you can't say that we've all pulled together when it's not the case.
Testing throughout the whole of the UK, the way that the furlough scheme has been deployed across the UK, the billions and billions that have been found to help people.
Okay, but that's your job. In Westminster, it's your job to distribute the money. But you have to remember, and a lot of the English nationalists will say this, they will say, look, we're giving money over to Scotland. And they forget that actually a lot of the money that they're giving back to different parts of the country or different countries within the Union were collected from those countries first. It's not that it's money going from England and in one direction. I wish people would remember that.
Across the whole of the UK, businesses in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, in England, I think that the UK has shown its value and will continue to show its value, Mr. Speaker. And when he talks about wanting to take Scotland back into the European Union, which I think seemed to be what he was saying just now, what he should understand, what the people of Scotland should understand, is that is a massive surrender of power by the people of Scotland.
But the Scottish people did not vote for Brexit. They voted against Brexit. Now what you're doing with the Internal Market Bill is you're taking powers away from the Scottish Parliament and handing them over to a Westminster administration. How is that giving powers back to Scotland? Boris Johnson is extremely damaging for the Union. The more he speaks, the more damage he does.
Straight back to Brussels, just as this country, just as the people of Scotland have taken it back again. And power not just over many aspects of their lives and their regulations, but of course power to control Scottish fisheries as well. And all that will be lost under his programme, and I may say I do not believe it will commend itself to the Scottish people. It was a programme that was decisively rejected in 2014.
Once again, so this was rejected in 2014. So Boris Johnson is trying to convince people that the Scottish people don't want independence. The Scottish people don't want to have the SNP in charge. But the Scottish people didn't vote for Brexit. They didn't vote for Boris Johnson. They voted for the SNP. And he still doesn't seem to get it. If the union is strong, then Boris Johnson should be asking for another referendum. He should be pushing for a referendum if he truly believes the union is strong and the Scottish people will vote to remain in the union. I've said this before. Put it to the people. If you're convinced that the union is strong, that the Scottish people will reject the SNP, they will reject independence, put it to the people. Allow them to decide. If you believe the union is strong, then you have nothing to fear. But you seem to have a lot to fear.
I believe that it is something that they would almost certainly reject again, Mr. Speaker. But as he said before, or as certainly as his party said
Message
before,
across. Sir Graham Brady!
So Boris was trying to grandstand here. And finally the Speaker of the House gruesome. And he interrupted the Prime Minister. He's like, okay, Boris, just shut the F up, okay? We've heard enough from you. We just hear the same old thing. But once again, I think this is hilarious. He doesn't look very happy here, does he? He knows where Boris is going. But just to summarize this, Boris Johnson is doing more damage to unionists than by just speaking, by just opening his mouth. You know, the best thing Boris Johnson could do for the union, for unionists, would be to go and hide in a fridge. Because the more he speaks, the more he messes up. You know, talking about how devolution is a disaster, it's a gift to independence supporters. It's a gift to the SNP. You know, devolution is something respected in Scotland. Like the people of Scotland are very happy with devolution. Boris Johnson saying it's a disaster. I really don't know what's going through his mind. I understand that the Tories hate it. The Tories want to take it away. They want to diminish it where possible. But every time they do that, they strengthen the argument for independence. Now, maybe they believe they can destroy devolution before independence can be set, you know, the wheels of independence can be set in motion. I don't think they can do that. They'll be on the road to ruin if they do. But let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.